Hello everyone, JesterGio here. Welcome back to Brewing Thoughts. Before we discuss the changes, I wanted to add a bit of context to this. So, as you can hear, I decided to use a text-to-speech software to have audio in my videos. I actually was making a text-to-speech video earlier where I talk about why I decided to do this and what it would mean for the channel. However, because I'm JesterGio and I can never have nice things, the balance changes for the end of the season have been revealed to us and I cannot afford to skip out on new content a second time. So, once that video does come out, hopefully this explains why I am talking in it as if I wasn't using it before, because quite frankly, I cannot be bothered to go back and revise that section. Anyways, back to the topic of this video. Every season, NetEase will release balance changes details for the game before releasing them during the final push. Alongside that, they'll also show off any new hunter or survivor they plan to release to next season, this case being Ivy. However, there are so many other changes made that are also coming to the game next season that are just as exciting as the character changes, so we will dive into most of the changes happening. There will be some heated opinions I will make on certain changes, but hey, what else is new? I'm gonna be saving the new hunters' thoughts until the end, so let's start with the small stuff and work our way up to the characters. The first major change they are doing is essentially reworking the ranking system of this game. Again, for context, when you reach champion tier or evil dragon rank right now, the ranking system changes from a tier system to a point system where stars work as points. When you reach 25 points on either side, you will tier up to Titan or Hydra rank. And with this new rank system, they're basically applying this to all tiers to my knowledge. I'm guessing all tiers will have a point requirement now to tier up and number ranks will just go away entirely. Additionally, they are getting rid of promotion matches as well as getting rid of excess points. Now, you will just tier up when you hit the point cap and you will be granted a 1-defeat immunity in order to prevent players from instantly ranking down. Afterwards, however, you will be able to be ranked down like normal. Overall, I'm very neutral about this change. Not that I think there's anything bad or good about it, it's just I don't feel anything about the changes. I guess I would definitely prefer this over the current system because now it unifies the tiers. Overall, fine changes, no complaints here. The next change is not so small and that's the changes to Insolence. Finally, there's the new trait that we all know will never come to the game from looking at NetEase's track record. However, I hope this isn't the case because I think this new trait actually has some potential to be really good or fun at the very least. The new trait is called Teleport. I'm just gonna call it Wormhole. The new trait is called Wormhole and what it does is allow the hunter to set up 2 points in the map 60 meters between each other. After a small delay, 2 wormholes will appear in the points you place them down at and allow you to teleport between the 2 wormholes. These wormholes will only be opened for 30 seconds and when you teleport between the wormholes, you will be put on a 3-second cooldown before you can teleport again. After 2 teleports, the wormholes will disappear. You can also manually cancel the wormhole skill by pressing the trait button again during those 30 seconds. Afterwards, wormhole will be put on a 100-second cooldown just like excitement. Now, they probably aren't gonna add this to the game because that's the fate most of these new traits suffer from, but I really hope they add it. I feel like this trait has a lot of potential to help the hunter, whether it be cypher defense, possible kiting situations, endgame scenarios. We do need to see it in action and it might not be as OP as we think it is, but it's still a pretty promising ability. The only downside I can see with it is the fact that it might go unused since most players have already settled on a trait they like, such as blinker peepers. Still, I'm all for adding new traits for the game, but I'm not gonna get my hopes up. And that covers the general changes I actually care about. Overall very good changes and I look forward to all of them. Now it is time to cover all of the balance changes made to the characters, which there are a lot of changes. As usual, I will be going over the changes I like the most first before slowly going over the changes I dislike or have a lot to say on. And trust me, there isn't a lot of good changes for me to go over, I have a lot to say on a lot of them. I guess to start things off, let's go over the Wuchang changes. First, they're buffing White Guard's attack speed, making the speed of it last 0.7 seconds rather than 0.82 seconds. This doesn't mean his attack will end shorter, it just means the backswing of his attack will be shorter. This change is fine, there's really nothing else I can say about it. It'll allow you to recover faster when you miss an attack, which can be sorta helpful, I guess. Next, they are increasing Blackguard's vaulting speed from 2.0 seconds to 1.8 seconds. I mean, that's also okay I guess. 2.0 seconds wasn't a lot of time either, but I guess that's fine. Finally, they're reducing the Final Presence Soul Siphon from 2 seconds to 1 and this one is actually a bit more impactful. It will allow you to attack or hit out of a teleport much faster from White Guard. That being said, it isn't a crazy change and it'll put him in line with Blackguard's Bell, but it's still a good change nonetheless. Overall, he has some minor changes that will be helpful, but ultimately won't amount to anything special. Next is Naiad, who got a bit of a buff herself. Her recharge time for her dashes has been reduced from 18 seconds to 15 seconds. I mean, it's a buff. What more do you really want me to say? Next up is Journalist, who actually has a change I don't actually have to gloss over. Whenever she is out of contain angles, she can use Rescue Angle to have Orfeo run to pallets like a contain angle. Although we all know they only did this in order to make Rescue Angle do something against Percy, this is still a pretty decent change. There will be times where you will have to take the chase against the hunter and, sometimes, 3 contain angles might not be enough. With this buff, you will have a much greater chance of being able to contain the hunter for just a bit longer. It also gives you another item for endgame if you find yourself being chased or an easy way to rescue at endgame, so it's a pretty good change all around. Believe it or not, they actually found a way to nerf Ferrari, aka Opera Singer, yet again. They nerfed the speed burst when you enter a shadow zone from 50% to 45% and increased Shadow Dance's cooldown from 17 seconds to 20 seconds. Will these changes finally knock her off her throne and make her balanced? I don't fucking know, but I'm willing to guess it probably won't. Nevertheless, I do appreciate them still trying to balance this abomination of a character, even if it is futile. Seeing how Aeroplanist is so far into this list, you'd think I have a lot of negative comments to say about him, but I actually don't. The distance he gains whenever he uses a jetpack has been reduced, which is something we should have seen coming. However, to compensate for this, Airborne Mode is now a cooldown-based ability rather than a one-time use. Whenever you use Airborne Mode, it will be put on a 150-second cooldown and, as long as you have another jetpack, you can use Airborne Mode again. I've seen a lot of people criticize this change because of its hefty cooldown with the trade-off of nerfed dashes. However, I do think the trade-off is well worth it. Despite the long cooldown, being able to access Airborne Mode again after it's been used is massive and has the potential to make Aeroplanist even more versatile than he already is. He can use Airborne Mode to go in for a rescue and still have it for the end game. He can also use it as a get-off-me tool kinda like Wildling Boar and ensure he still has it if the hunter leaves. On top of that, you'll still have it for when you get chased and it'll still buff your dashes, so that's cool. I know a lot of people are upset that his distance pulling got nerfed, but I feel the new distance will still be fine. They did this same thing with Patient back when he first released, so I'm sure it'll be on that same level. Besides, let's be honest, Aeroplanist was kinda busted and needed to be tuned a bit. In my opinion, I'm very happy with the changes they did and we'll have to look out for what the distance nerf actually look like. Alright, now we're in for the fun stuff. It's time to talk about the changes I'm not a fan of. And if you've been following my channel for quite a while, I'm sure you can guess what those changes are. Starting off with the least egregious change, we have the Painter change. First, Painter can now start painting even if he only has 67% of the hunter's face recorded. However, your painting speed will be reduced and it will only speed up depending how much of the hunter you have recorded. Additionally, you can now place a painting down even if the painting is only 67% completed. Like recording, however, the stun of the painting depends on how much of the painting you completed, with the 67% painting giving the weakest stun. Now, maybe I'm the idiot here and I don't know any better, but what is the point of these changes? Painter can already record the hunter's face at such a fast rate, about 3 seconds to exact. 67% will only save you about 1 second from being able to start painting, and you'd get nerfed if you started painting at that point. This makes this buff completely useless, as it isn't hard to record the hunter's face in the first place, and you don't even save much time from painting at 67%. In fact, you are actively nerfing yourself if you do start painting at that 2-second limit compared to waiting the full 3 seconds. The painting buff is a bit better than the recording one, since painting a picture takes 8 seconds to accomplish. With this buff, you can place a painting down after roughly 5 seconds of painting, which is okay. However, like the record buff, what's the point in not drawing the full painting? It's still useful to be able to put a painting down early, but I feel the time trade-off just isn't worth the weaker stun. You can already drop palettes and vault windows while painting anyways, so it shouldn't be so hard to get a painting down. The only time I could see it being helpful is if you're against a hunter like Opera Singer or BQ, where you need to put down a painting quickly or else you will die. Otherwise, this buff is completely pointless, and I don't understand why NetEase even made it in the first place. If I were to buff Painter without giving him a third painting, I'd buff his speed buff from 2% to 3%. It would allow him to gain the buff of free painting like before, but still have his 2 paintings, and would definitely be more useful than whatever this is. While not a bad buff, I think the Painter buff is really lacking. What isn't lacking, however, is the Wildling buff, and, boy, do I have some things to say about this. This text-to-speech may sound calm and collect, but believe me when I say that I am fuming when reading these changes. Let's start off with the most tame of the bunch, the nerf to Wildling. Basically, the fixed an interaction that would happen when Wildling was interrupted while pushing the hunter. In these cases, the Wildling would be stopped like normal, but the hunter will keep being pushed until they hit the max range limit or hit an obstacle. With this change, the hunter will stop being pushed when Wildling stops pushing. Honestly, I'm fine with this change simply because you'll almost never encounter this in-game. Unless you get hit off boar while charging or get hit by Bell mid-charge, you'll probably never pull this off in a real match. I'm sure the Wildling community will be a bit disappointed this tech is gone, and I feel for them. Personally, I don't care about this change, and I'm fine with it being removed. They also made Boar's charge activation much faster, which I'm okay with actually. Boar's activation time caused some players to miss balloon rescues or pivotal supports due to the wind-up, so this change will definitely help. Now the other changes, on the other hand, are a different story. The first change they did was allow Wildling to get on Boar much faster. It basically works like the recent Gravekeeper buff where he enters the ground faster. I complained about this change a lot, so it's no surprise when I say I hate this change. However, unlike the Gravekeeper change, I now have the foresight as to why they even made this change, Opera Singer. This change was solely designed to counter Opera Singer and make sure she can't rush a Wildling and hit him before he got on board. As a result, the rest of the hunter roster is forced to suffer. So despite this buff being targeted towards Opera Singer specifically, I fucking hate this change. Can we please stop rewarding players for blatantly using their abilities in front of the hunter's face by leaving them unpunished? I've said this shit with Gravekeeper and Little Girl, and it sucks that we have to continue watching cool characters get dumped down because people can't use the character properly. Apparently, that isn't an option anymore for the devs, because they also made it so regardless if you get off board manually or not, your riding cooldown will be 30 seconds. It doesn't matter if time runs out or you get knocked off board, the cooldown will remain 30 seconds. To give a bit of context for my thoughts, I hated it when they removed the cooldown debuff for opening letters as Postman, and I hate this cooldown buff. Look, I get it. Wildling is giga bottom tier with no redeeming qualities the other characters cannot provide already, but I think it's still stupid how you can just get on board, tank 2 hits with no worries, and then survive for the next 30 seconds to get on board again. Against your counters, this buff won't do much because they probably already have ways to knock you off board easily, such as Gamekeeper. However, against the rest of the roster, this change literally makes Wildling not worth chasing because he doesn't need to care about getting hit. He can tank all the terror shocks, all the ability hits, all the timers run down as he pleases, and it will not matter because he will not be punished for it. What made the cooldown debuff so interesting was the fact that it forced Wildling players to think about when they got off board to have the reduced cooldown. If they messed up and let the timer run out or get knocked off board, their kiting ability is on a longer cooldown, giving the hunter an extra chance to down them. These changes completely removes this interaction, and that infuriates me. I said this once and I'll say it again, can we not tell players it is okay to fuck around and let themselves use their abilities recklessly with no consequences? So yeah, not a fan of these Wildling changes. They dumb down the character to an insane degree and it makes an otherwise interesting character safe, boring, and cheap. I can't even say I hope they change this buff because we all damn know it's coming to live servers. Last, but certainly not least, we have Perfumer with by far the most insane in my opinion. The buff is really simple. The time you spend in the perfume recall animation has been reduced from 0.83 seconds to 0.49 seconds. This is almost half of the original time. This change is insane for a couple of reasons, with the first being it makes her able to interact faster. I think I shouldn't need to explain why being able to move early will make Perfumer stronger, but this notion is applicable to hunters. Certain hunters either have really long end lag on their abilities or really long recovery that will allow you to gain more distance off of. Hunter attacks like Ripper's Fog Blade or Feaster's Tentacle hits will become slightly less effective because of the shorter time you're in the recall animation. You can now gain even more distance from drop down or certain hunter abilities like Gamekeeper's Hook because of the shorter animation. However, I think the biggest thing that comes from this change is the damage boost you get after using perfume. For those of you who don't know, when you get hit by the hunter, you gain a temporary speed boost for 2 seconds. This speed boost does carry over to perfume, but it isn't as effective. This is because of that recall animation. It eats up your speed boost before you can use it, which is why perfume is much more effective on veteran characters. With this change, however, you can now experience the speed boost at its fullest. This makes Perfumer an even stronger character for transitioning in tight kiting areas. This also has the side effect of buffing every single character with veteran, since it's more of a perfume buff rather than a perfumer buff. Perfumer may not be meta, but I am really scared about how these changes would play out. Personally, I would much rather them just remove one of her useless debuffs as her buff, such as the healing one. Only time will tell about how these changes will go, although I am not optimistic for this buff, that's for sure. With that said, we've now covered everything about the balance changes coming to the game except the gameplay of the new hunter. At the time of writing this, we still do not know what the new hunter's power is or have any gameplay. Plus, I really want to showcase her in a separate video, so I'm gonna hold off on her for now. If I were to comment on these balance changes, though, I'm definitely not a fan of these changes being made. However, I don't think these changes are necessarily bad and will definitely help these characters against the meta. With that said, that's all the time I have for today, but keep your eyes out for my Ivy video I'll post later. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see all of you next time.